S.C.Ruffy, also known as Scruffy, is a privately owned ballast truck that is featured in the Thomas and Friends Season 4 episode, Toad Stands By. Though he was only featured in one episode, he is a very memorable character in the series for one reason. He met a very interesting fate that shook me and I'm sure many other children at the time. Despite his short appearance, Scruffy got a lot of merchandise over the years and has had many different appearances, usually featured with bright orange accents that are actually just supposed to be rust spots, appearing with a black undercarriage at the end of the episode after his rebuild, and a total different look in the Railway series illustrations. Out of his many forms, today we are taking a look at the Bachmann version of Scruffy in the HO gauge line, as well as giving him some detailing, modifications, and add-ons to bring him to life. I picked this up at a model Trainz store for about $26, which really isn't too bad. The overall look of this piece of rolling stock is fantastic. Bachmann puts an incredible amount of detailing into their models, and I love what they've done in the Thomas line. The model appears very glossy, which is one thing I dislike about it, as well as the large couplings, but these are easy fixes. There are some nasty mold lines around the buffer beams that will also need to be taken care of. The first thing to do on Scruffy is to remove his coupling system. These are for easy coupling compatibility with other HO gauge rolling stock, but I will be replacing this system with a hook and chain system to better replicate what is seen in the show. I'll save these couplers for other uses though. Next is sanding off the mold lines on the buffers. The vertical line that goes around them is from the injection mold process and isn't very realistic looking. This is sanded off with a combination of 400 grit sanding sticks and 2000 grit sandpaper. I separate the top and bottom pieces to better reach the mold lines on the inside of the buffer beams. The thick mold line runs between the hook coupling and the base of the buffers and is removed from a combination of scraping it away with my X-Acto knife, using 400 grit sandpaper, and then eventually buffing it with 2000 grit to give it a smooth finish. I removed the plug where the couplers were screwed in with my hobby cutters. The bar sticks far below and is distracting, and since I never plan on reattaching the couplers, this is fine. I cut it off and gave it a good sanding to smooth it out. I also sanded the inside of the hook to give it a bit more room to fit in the chain for the coupling system. Next, we step over to the spray booth to lay down some primer with my airbrush. Primer helps to see any mistakes I may have made while sanding, as well as giving the paint something to stick to. Then a layer of paint is applied. I chose to use a slightly darker orange than the model was originally molded in. I also sprayed the bottom of the model with a dark orange to give it more of a shaded tone. I know it's bad to do this, but I also applied a bit of darker color to the outside of the wheels. Now it's time for detailing. I use a gray paint to apply some small bits of color to the amazing detail on the axle boxes and the other parts of the undercarriage. I also dry brush some gray around the pieces to give it some depth. Don't forget the buffers. After that, a wash is applied. I used a mud-based wash by MIG that adds a lovely dirty effect. I essentially just paint it in and then clean it up using a Q-tip. It flushes out the details and adds a layer of grime that really adds depth to it. I also sprayed a few bits of brown directly onto the carriage, but my camera messed up the footage. Whoops. The brown shading I added adds some pre-rust and dirt effects to the top portion of Scruffy. More MIG wash is applied to fill in the panel lines, and then streaking effects are done with a Q-tip and a small brush. This is applied all around, anywhere the detail can be filled in. I also applied a green MIG wash to contrast with the brown. I dab this in batches around creases and detailed parts, and also use a Q-tip to streak that. I next use a Vallejo rust wash on what would be the metal parts on the truck body. Scruffy is usually seen with bright orange detailing on these parts, but again, in reality, it's just rust. This wash is applied in layers and dries to form different shades of multicolored rusts. More streaking and grime is applied with alternating MIG washes. I like to think that this green is the wood rot the Fat Controller reference to Scruffy having. I also use a makeup sponge to texturize and dilute the blotches of green. The next stage is adding pastels to create dust effects. I use Tamiya Weathering Master for this step. The dry, dirty colored pastels are brushed on and are great for adding realistic dirt buildup to your models. Scruffy is a ballast truck and is seen carrying a lighter colored stone in this episode, so I chose a lighter color powder to apply to him. I also dusted a heavy amount on the inside to add a nice layer of ballast debris. Back over to the airbrush, I apply a quick coat of gloss to seal all of the weathering effects and such in, but don't worry, you won't be staying glossy for long. I decided to superglue the entire truck together by gluing the metal weight bar in place and then gluing the body on top of that. I was attempting to add just a slight bit of shading to his face, but I went a bit overboard and ended up repainting his entire face off camera. Not too bad for my first attempt. I use Alclad brand flat coat to give my models a lovely flat finish that seals all the details in and adds a touch of realism over the shiny coat it originally had. After that's cured, I snap the wheel sets in and start cutting the chains I use as the couplers. Perfect fit. And since Scruffy is a ballast wagon, I figured I'd give him some cargo. These rocks I had left over from a diorama project looked to be pretty much the same color, shape, and size as to what he was hauling in the episode he was featured in. And here we have Scruffy in all of his grimy glory. Scruffy was a lot of fun to make. Thank you all for the love and support I've been getting towards this channel, and I hope to bring many, many more of these small episodes to you. Thanks for watching.